Hello and welcome to A Sense of Centerville and Washington Township, your place for stories about ordinary and extraordinary residents and places in the Centerville and Washington Township area. I am your host, Susan Melville from Centerville-Washington History, and I look forward to hearing your story. Today, my guest is Jerry Strange. Jerry was born in Dayton, Ohio in 1935. He went to Belmont Elementary School and graduated from Stivers High School in 1953. Jerry got a BS from Otterbein University and a master's from Xavier University. He taught mathematics at the University of Dayton for 40 years, from which he retired professor emeritus in 2000. He is an active member of Centerville-Washington History and serves as a trustee. Jerry and his wife Hilda restored a historic home in Ripley, Ohio, and the historic Aaron Nutt Jr. House in Centerville. They are also active members of Normandy Church. I appreciate Jerry being here as my first guest and look forward to getting to know him better. So welcome, Jerry.
Well, good to be here.
It's been good to get to know you
That's
over the last few days. Being new to Centerville-Washington History, this is a great way for me to get to know people. So my first question that I wanted to ask you is, what brought you to the Centerville-Washington Township area?
Okay. In 1959, Hilda and I got married, and we lived in an apartment in Dayton for about a year, and some friends of ours had previously moved to the concept development west of 48 in Centerville, and we had visited with them. And at the time, Hilda was working and I was teaching at the University of Dayton, working there. And so we thought, well, maybe we can afford to buy as opposed to rent. So Concept was developing the east side of 48 at that time. And so we came out, talked to the salesman, and eventually settled on a house on East Drive. Now, at the time, we were both Daytonians, and so our inclination was to buy a house in the Dayton area. I'd grown up in Belmont, and Hilda had grown up in Patterson Park. And so we looked around a little bit. And what we discovered at the time, this was back in 1959, actually 1960 by now, is that per square foot, housing in Dayton was much more expensive than it was to buy a plat home in Centerville. And of course, as beginners, we looked at the amount of square footage that you could get for your dollar as a very important thing. So we had friends out here. We liked the floor plan of the ranch that we eventually bought, and it was cheaper per square foot than we could have bought in Dayton, and so that's how we ended up in Centerville.
So it was basically just a budgetary, better
It was
value.
Primarily budgetary, I would say. Yeah, we had no reason one way or the other than financial to come here or to stay in Dayton. But plat housing, of course, was big at the time. After once World War II was over, there were just all kinds of plats built, and you could get a pretty good amount of square feet for your dollar in the plats, and so that's what we did. And we've been here since I think we moved in November of 1960, I think it was.
Before I was born.
Yeah. Our daughter was born in June of 1961 then. So
did you commute? Did you take a bus, or how?
No, I commuted.
You just drove every day?
Yeah. At the time, of course, 48 was a 2-lane road. It was not into Dayton. It was not a 4-lane road. but there wasn't near the traffic on it that there is now. And, it was not a bad commute. Let's see, I did it for 40 years, so I guess I must have got pretty used to it. About a 20-minute commute is what it was.
So no carpools or anything like that?
Only in, was it 1968 that we had the oil embargo kind of thing that
I was thinking like 73.
Maybe it was 70. I don't know. It all kind of runs together for me. My past is just kind of one kind of gray area. So, but anyway, for about a year, myself and 3 other UD employees carpooled in, and that was really very pleasant. We got into kind of relationship, I guess, closeness that people do. We all liked each other. And turned out that the reason we quit is we picked up a 5th person. And that person didn't quite fit into the dynamics of the group. For one thing, the person was late lots of times. And if you're in a carpool, you want things to run on schedule. And, so within probably 2 or 3 months of this person joining the group, it dissolved. So, but it was very pleasant at the time. Yeah.
Well, that's how it ends.
Yeah,
somebody makes everyone else late.
Yeah. And over the time, I probably did take the bus in a few times, not often, but a few. And I was into bicycling in the late, I guess from about 1980 till I retired. And so in the summertime, I would sometimes ride my bike in, which is a fairly easy ride. In the mornings, be nice and cool. And then in the afternoon, coming home, I'd just ride over to Main Street. I think it was, Main Street. Catch a bus, throw my bike on the bike rack, and ride the bus home. So that, I did ride the bus more in that sense,
It kept you in great shape, I'm sure.
Yeah, I did a lot of bicycling from about 1980 to early 1990s, I guess it was. We had a group of people that we got together with on a regular basis, did some vacationing on bicycles with them, that kind of thing. So
that's great. So my next question is, how has Centerville changed in the time you've lived locally? Now, obviously, the 4-lane we've already talked about, that Far Hills is a 4-lane instead of a 2-lane road. But what other things or observations have you made over that time?
Well, certainly the traffic volume is the most noticeable thing, I guess you would say. All you have to do is go out going south on Main Street about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and see the traffic backed up at Franklin there. There's some serious traffic problems. But I guess I would say maybe this, and this is not as noticeable, but the makeup of Centerville and Washington Township has changed some. When we first came out here in 1960, I'm just making a guess of this because it was hard to come by any factual data, but there was probably, I'm going to guess at, let's say 98% were white residents and maybe 2% were people of color. And at present, I think that's more like 88% is white and about 12% is people of color. Now that in itself, is interesting. And of course, we live in a pluralistic society. And so I guess my view on this is that it shows that Centerville has been somewhat receptive to changing demographics, and you hear the stories about redlining and the problem that people of color have in getting housing. And certainly in a pluralistic society, whether it's different religions or different races or, different economic status, you all have to get along some way. And so if you live in a community that excludes some part of that, then I think you're kind of failing in the idea of a pluralistic society. So I wouldn't say that Centerville was welcoming, that is by going out and waving a flag, but they have allowed a lot of people of color to move in since then, which I think is the way a pluralistic society has to be. You have to, if you're going to have pluralism, then you have to have people, you have to allow people to do what they want to do. You can't say you can't be part of this, because you're not our religion. You can't be part of this because you're not our race. We exclude people, for one reason or another. So I think, Centerville's Diversity Council is an indicator that the city has, and the township too, has accepted the fact that that society is diverse, and that the idea is to approach it and to recognize that when you do have a pluralistic society, there are differences of opinion, and you have to learn how to live with people that aren't like you.
I love that. Yeah, I actually for a short time was a part of the Diversity Council as well. We had moved from California, so I love to see diversity in Centerville. I think it's much more interesting, and I've noticed that difference in just the short time that I've lived here. Well, short being 25 years.
Yeah, well,
not that short, but in comparison.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about you starting a family here.
Yeah.
And so I was curious about what kind of things you did as a family in Centerville during that time. Maybe what restaurants did you go to eat, or were there movie theaters that you liked to go to, or what did you do?
Well, first of all, there weren't any movie theaters in Centerville or Washington Township at the time that our kids were growing up. I mean, you could go to movie theaters, but, there were a couple restaurants. The Stagecoach Inn, which sat at the southeast corner of Route 48 in Franklin, was kind of I'll call it a mom and pop restaurant, a blue plate special kind of restaurant. We used to eat there a good bit, and that got torn down. I can't remember now what the year was, and they put in a Shell oil station there. And that was my, I guess I would say that was my first protest.
Oh, goodness.
At the time, I had a Shell oil credit card. And so when they tore down the restaurant and to put in a Shell station, I sent my credit card back with a note that said, "I will never buy Shell gasoline."
Did you follow through with that?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know that I have ever bought Shell gasoline. It may have happened, but it would be a very rare.
So you hold a grudge.
I
got to remember that.
I do.
That's hilarious.
So anyway, back to your question about the kids.
Yeah.
The other restaurant that opened was a restaurant that opened where Sweeney's is now, I believe it was.
Okay. It
was called Antonio's. It was an Italian restaurant anyway. And so we liked that, and we would go up there occasionally. And then they were just kind of limping along. And Dayton Daily News food critic came out, reviewed it, gave it a really positive review. And suddenly you couldn't get in the place because everybody wanted to go to Antonio's or Anticole's or whatever it was.
The power of a review.
Power of the review, yeah, yeah.
Publicity.
Yeah. And at that time, I don't think in the early 60s there were any fast food places around. All that development occurred later, I think, So what did we do with the kids? Well, not a whole lot, I don't think. Both our kids did a little bit in Little League. Our daughter, which is our oldest child, played softball for several summers when she was like middle school age kids, that kind of stuff. Our son played a little bit of soccer, a little bit of football, a little bit of baseball, and that he pretty well stayed, I guess, into baseball until he was maybe a junior or senior in high school or something like that. But,
so was the bowling alley there when you were raising your kids?
There was a bowling alley,
because I remember when that was torn down. We were just heartbroken.
Yeah, but I don't ever remember taking my kids bowling.
Okay.
I suppose we probably did. I don't know, but
maybe Hilda did that.
Yeah. Well, I might have done it. I have trouble remembering things, and so, like I said, my past in many cases is just kind of a foggy gray area.
It's just all very long time ago.
It's all mushed together. Yeah, right.
Okay, well, that's great. So you mentioned that you were involved with diversity.
Yeah.
So, and you were also involved very much in the Normandy Church and Centerville-Washington History.
Right.
So what kind of things have you most enjoyed about those organizations that you've been involved in?
First, I guess in the Diversity Council, I think I was on that about 3 or 4 years. And in the time that I was on there, the Diversity Council used to do a program at the high school on diversity, open to the community. And so you'd have different programs like, and I got put in charge of that for a while, for about 3 years, I guess. And like one of the programs that we had was a program about diversity in music. So, we had a couple high school kids who were guitar players. We had a young woman who was a classic Indian dancer, like Indian, not American Indian. Mm-hmm. We had a young lady who was Korean who did a classic Korean number. And so we had another guy who played the dulcimer who, did some country music. And so just to, they were programs in which we were trying to show that people in the community have different interests. And they really were well done. We had a director come in, and right now I can't remember his name, unfortunately.
That's okay.
But
they know who they are.
He had contacts at the high school, and so we would get the talent together, and then he would get the kids, I guess, in the theater area to assist in all this. And so they would become an integral part of the program. So it cost a couple $1,000s to put this on. Well, after doing this for several years, it occurred to me that the same people were coming to this all the time. I mean, basically about 70 or 80 people would show up, and they would be the same 70 or 80 people that showed up last year. And so we really weren't, we were, preaching to the, what do you say?
You weren't reaching new people.
No, we weren't reaching anybody new. And so I said, why are we spending $2,000, $2,500 a year to put this on when it doesn't, it isn't really, it's interesting and I enjoy doing it, but it just seems to me like it's money wasted because you're talking to people who already agree with you.
That's a good point.
So
it sounds really exciting, though. I mean, I don't know if I remember that happening, but yeah.
So, there's a name for it, and some of the things I think are on YouTube still.
I'll have to look.
You get things on YouTube and they just stay there forever.
Yes.
I guess.
Got to be careful.
So maybe I can get you the name of one of them, and you can watch it.
Yeah.
So anyway, then after I made my announcement that I thought, did you ask me how I got on that? I forget. The way I got on it was kind of interesting. At the time, I was is interesting to me, not anybody else maybe, but at the time I was the president.
That's all that matters.
I was the president of the board of the society. Okay, I guess. So Hilda and I had gone down to Centerville Library to a concert. I think Jim McCutcheon was playing guitar down there or something. So we're sitting there, and of course you're sitting out in the lobby there, and we're watching people come in and out of the building, checking books out and do all that kind of stuff. And as I watched, I was impressed with how diverse the group was. I mean, because I'd always thought of Centerville as being 98%, white. But as I sat there in the library here, just person of color, just lots of it. And so I wrote a little article in the Curator about what I had observed. And so, who is one of the main diversity people? She worked at the library. I can't think of her name, though. But anyway, she called and said, "Hey, I read your article. Would you like to be on the Diversity Council?" So that's how I got on.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So how about with Centerville-Washington History? What's one of your favorite things you've been involved with that?
I'm very product oriented. I like to have something to see. So I kind of hooked up with Adam Zengel, and for the time that I was in there, and we did a lot of maintenance.
Oh, that's very appreciated, I'm sure.
That's the kind of stuff that I like to do.
Oh, excellent.
Okay, yeah.
Well, we love that.
So I really enjoyed that. We did a lot of work. Well, I did some work on the chicken house, for example, painting, that kind of thing. Did a lot of work around the nut cottage. And the other thing that I did was, do you know what Chautauqua is?
I've read a little bit about it just in some of the publications, but maybe you can explain it to people that might be listening. Well,
Chautauqua is a program that run by some organization within the state, I think it is. And what they do is in the summertime, they will come to your community and set up a big tent. And then for 3 or 4 evenings, you have a program in which imitators of famous people come in and talk to the people who have come to the tent. So it, like you might have General Grant, somebody playing him, or you might have somebody doing George Washington Carver, or you might have somebody doing, I don't know who. In other words, they're all imitators, and there are a lot of people around that do that.
Yeah.
And they're very good at it. So one year, I don't know why we got into this. It was while I was still president, I think. and I don't think that I had anything to do with initiating it. But anyway, we decided to put on the Chautauqua. Now, putting on the Chautauqua was a lot of work that at the time Vicky Bondi and her crew did most of, and it cost a lot of money, and at that time I think most of that money came from the Eck family, or from their foundation, I think.
Okay.
And it was reasonably successful. I mean, people came out, really enjoyed it, and so, you know, that was kind of, I certainly enjoyed that part of it.
So have you always been interested in history?
Yeah, I guess, in a way. I mean,
you can say no. It's okay.
Yeah.
Some history, I guess.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess that's selective history.
Selective history.
Yeah. I don't remember being particularly good at world history in high school, or
I wasn't
American
either.
history or anything like that. But yeah,
it's the dates like it just all jumble up in my mind. Yeah.
Yeah, and now you know, around town here, I like the historic homes. I have trouble remembering the names of them, but I do, you know, and I like the fact that Centerville has tried to maintain the character, you know, of the village, you know, in the downtown area. I'm not too sure about their uptown thing. I mean, but that, you know, they're going to do what they're going to do, whether I'm not too sure about it or not.
Yeah, and there's a lot of good things, and there might be some bad things. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Well, yeah, just wait and see.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it's all going to be a good thing. But you kind of wonder, you know, why do you want to make a destination out of a place that's already so overcrowded? I mean, not with people walking around, but with traffic going through that intersection of Franklin and 48. I mean,
it is getting more crowded, but it, to me, I live in that area, so I'm kind of excited to see, you know, new things come in that keep maintaining the old.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right.
Making it pretty.
All right.
So, I would love to talk about living in your historic home. So tell me how you got there and what that experience was like
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, as I said, in 1960, we bought a concept plat home on East Drive in Centerville. And we lived there until, I guess about 2000. And about 2000, we started looking around for an older home. We'd gotten tired of the plat dwelling, I guess. And so we started looking around. Not so much in Centerville, because we didn't figure there was anything that we'd find in Centerville, but we looked in places like Miamisburg and Waynesville and places like that. And we had some criteria that had to be met. And part of the criteria was, back in 1985, we had bought a home in Ripley, Ohio, a house in Ripley, Ohio, and had spent 15 years restoring it. And so we had gotten very attached to the Ripley community, and we didn't want to give that up. And so in looking at housing, we said, well, now it takes a little over an hour and a half to drive to Ripley. We don't want to exceed 2 hours in that trip. And so you couldn't go too far north, or you couldn't go too far west, you know, or you would exceed that. So in other words, we were looking around. We had a realtor friend who was looking for us, and we would go look at older houses, and then, you know, nothing seemed to fit our criteria. And we did that for maybe 6-7 years. And finally, one day, Hilda come back and says, hey, there's a for sale sign on the cottage on Alex Bell Road. And so we contacted our realtor friend, went in and looked at it, decided we liked it, and ended up buying it. Now, when we bought it, the master bedroom was a room on the first floor. This is a cottage, in case you don't know that, of an addition that had been added at some time prior to probably the World War II. The previous owner didn't know when it had been added, but it was not part of the original house. And the bedroom that they called a master bedroom was a room about 10 by 12. And we just felt this isn't going to work. I mean, we can't have a bedroom that's 10 by 12. You can hardly get out of bed, you know. So the first thing that we did after buying the house was we added a bedroom on, which was a more suitable size, and also on the first floor. So that took the better part of a year, I guess. I did all the construction, everything except pouring the concrete. So, and that room was 16 by 18. And then we took the room that they had called the master bedroom and kind of made that into our computer room, I guess, and computer and laundry room.
So it's well used.
Well, yeah, it's multi-purpose room. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite place in the house and property?
Yeah, I do. The living room in that house is my favorite room. It's just I don't know why. It just, a space that I really like. I like the way my wife has decorated it. I like the feeling of the room, and it just, we spend most of our time in what we would call our family room, which is not the living room. So, but I really like the living room. Yeah.
And so, what does it mean to you to be in a historic home? What's exciting about that?
I don't know. I mean, we don't have any ghosts or anything. Mm-hmm. We own two homes that were built in the early 1800s. Neither one of them seems to have any ghosts in it. And
that's a relief.
Yeah. And I don't have this feeling of relating to the people who lived there before. I would say of our house in Centerville, the Nutt Junior Cottage, it's just a size of house that Hilton and I both really like. It's not too big, it's not too spacious, and yet there's plenty of room for two people, more than enough room. And the way it's set up, it's possible. We're both retired, and so in days when we're both home, it's possible for us to separate ourselves from each other so that you're not tripping over each other. It's
the right size.
It's exactly the right size. Mm-hmm. And I guess I feel it was a home that I was destined to own. I don't know. I mean, I just, I really...
It just felt right when you got there.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's how a lot of people pick their houses. This just feels like home.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. When we, it had a lot wrong with it when we bought it. Mm-hmm. But when you see something that you feel really strongly about, you overlook all those things and you say, well, I can make this the way I want it. So when we bought the house, it was not connected to county water.
Wow.
We had a well, and the well was not a very good well, on a matter of fact. So eventually we, paid to have a water line run in from the county water supply. It had oil heat, which we found particularly irritating. It was dirty, seemed like us, and expensive. So we had gas brought in. Now, It also has a septic system, which we prefer not to have, or we preferred not to have, but there was no place in the local vicinity to connect to a sewer line. So
You had to keep that.
So we had to keep that. Now, as it turns out, we had some initial problems. I know you don't get into that, but with the septic system, but for the last 10 years, it's just been working like septic systems are supposed to. And so we don't have any complaints. And so we're not looking to connect to the county system on that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But like that. And then, like I said, the master bedroom was this little 8 by 11 room. And as soon as we built on what we now would say is the master bedroom, it just, made space much more usable and
livable.
And available. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we remodeled the kitchen and bathroom, stuff like that. So.
Well, just for those that are listening, Jerry's book is in our publication through Centerville-Washington History, A Sense of Place. And it's on page 100 in that book. And it's just a really cute picture. One of my favorite things that you wrote about recently in The Curator is the well.
Yeah.
And how you wondered, how did they dig that well?
Yeah.
And that to me, a lot of those things that people built, we don't know how to build that many things right now. So it's just so fascinating to think about how they did that.
Did I tell you the result of that article?
No, I'm curious.
Well, after that article came out, I got an email from a guy who said, go to hand digging a well.com or something like that.
Okay, so a website.
So there is a website, and I went to it, and it gives you a detailed explanation for how you would go about doing it.
Oh, now I'll have to go look at that.
So if I had looked at that beforehand, I would have never written that article.
But it's still a good article because I think that's what's interesting about history is it makes you ask questions, makes you think about things.
Yeah, right.
So,
but I thought that was interesting. I only got one response, and that was some guy telling me, go to this website and it'll tell you how to dig that well.
So he felt good that he was able to teach you something.
Yeah, right.
Okay, the next thing I wanted to talk to you about was Normandy Church. So I have to say that, and I mentioned this to you before, I've lived here for just over 25 years and have driven past that church many times and just thought, oh, it's such an interesting building.
Yeah.
And I knew about the grants and all that, but I didn't understand how they connected.
Yeah,
it didn't connect to me that was their estate and that it covered such a big area of the Centerville section.
Uh-huh.
So I guess what I want to find out from you is favorite stories about Normandy Farms or Normandy Church, or favorite parts of Normandy, the home.
Oh, wow. You mean from my viewpoint? Huh?
Yeah, from your point.
Well, that's the only viewpoint I have.
That's the one that matters.
That's the only one there is.
You're the guest.
Well, I guess, the first thing I'd have to say is that when we joined Normandy about 1965 or 1966, it had become a church in 1955 or 56 in that area. And so we weren't charter members or anything like that. But when our kids were, I think, 5 and 3 at the time, and while it didn't have anything to do with us joining Normandy Church, a perk of joining the church was they have a swimming pool at the time. The Grants, of course, being wealthy people, had a swimming pool as part of the estate. And so when the church bought that property, the swimming pool came along with it. So that what the church did then was they said, well, you can't use the swimming pool just because you're a member. We're going to set up a separate association to run the pool. And so if you want to use the pool, then you have to join the association. Now, I think you had to be a member of the church before you could join the association. But although they might have opened it to neighbors. I can't remember that. But anyway, that was really a good part of being the church. Our kids were just starting to learn to swim. And so we spent a lot of time at the pool and dealing with, I think one year I was actually I don't know what you call it, the chairman of the group or what. But anyway, we hired a local high school kid and a teacher in the summertime to guard the pool. And so we had a guard and somebody ran the snack shack and that kind of stuff.
It's a great way to meet people, to be a part of the pool.
And it was really. And eventually, I don't know, maybe in the 80s or something like that, got too much of a maintenance problem and they tore it down or filled it in is what they did. I guess you don't tear a swimming pool down.
It's very down already.
Already down. Maybe one of the interesting things about that period is if you have a swimming pool, you have to chlorinate the water. And so we had a chlorination system where we had these big tanks of chlorine gas, and you had to, connect them into some system which then chlorinated the water, kept it germ-free. So one day I get this call from the guard, and they said the chlorine tank got away from the guy who was trying to connect it. And chlorine gas is bad stuff. You don't want to be breathing it. Well, the kid who was trying to connect it didn't manage to get it turned off. So that whole tank of chlorine gas got expelled into the atmosphere. Well, chlorine gas is toxic, and it's also kind of heavier than, well, not heavier than but it kind of stayed together, and the wind kind of moved this through the local neighborhood. And chlorine gas, it acts like a defoliant, and so it didn't kill the trees, but it caused a lot of leaves to fall off. And so we had a lot of problem with the neighbors. They were going to sue us and all that kind of stuff. But it turned out nothing happened. Nobody got injured. And so it was all over.
But it was a liability.
It was, yeah. And so who would, it was things like that, that were kind of fun. And I guess now the thing, Hilda's real involved in the politics of the church. I mean, she's on the board of trustees, or she's on the women's association, that kind of stuff.
You guys stay involved. That's for sure.
But I have never, I decided early on I wasn't going to get into that. She could do it. And now, when she's involved, if there's something that needs to be fixed or done that I can do, then she, of course,
she volunteers
me to do that. And one of the things that I got into, it's probably been 8 or so years ago now. The Normandy Women's Association or group has a Christmas bazaar every year. And the first Tuesday or first Wednesday, I guess it is, of November. And so about 7 or 8 years ago, the person who ran the flea market couldn't do it or wouldn't do it or something. And so Hilda said, we need somebody to run the flea market. So myself and another member, Mike Cornelius, were volunteered by our wives to kind of run the flea market. And that's turned out to be a really pleasant experience. It just, there's a lot of work for about 3 or 4 days of getting the stuff in, getting it out. Then you have the day of the sale, and then you got to get rid of everything that doesn't sell, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of the year, no big deal. But that's kind of been kind of a fun thing for me as far as the church.
Yeah, I look forward to going to that sale.
Yeah.
If nothing else, just to see the building.
Yeah.
But I got some really nice earrings this last time. So
that's kind of become a big booth.
The little boutique.
Glitz and Glamour.
Glitz and Glamour. Yeah, right. It's fun.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Okay, so we're almost out of time. So I just have, I think, one last question. So what do you like about living in the Centerville and Washington Township area?
Well, I like the fact that people seem to be friendly. I always object. I don't know whether you knew, at one time an auto dealer advertised that Centerville was warm and friendly Centerville. And I always kind of objected to that. You can't declare yourself to be warm and friendly. I mean,
is it warm and cheerful? I think
warm
that's
and cheerful.
the.
Warm and cheerful. That's what it was.
You can't declare yourself.
I mean, that has to be somebody else saying that, not you. But I do think that Centerville is a warm place. I mean, and in many respects, a welcoming place to people. I like the fact that it's a stable community. I mean, there's relatively little crime. We have had, when we lived on East Drive, we had the house burglarized twice, and we had a radio stolen out of a car one time. But other than that, not much. So, it's a safe community, I would say, by and large. And, I don't know.
It's just home.
It's convenient. Yeah. It's, we've been here, for more than 60 years. So I guess you'd have to call it home now. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Well, it's home for us too.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess I really appreciate the time getting to know you a little bit today.
Okay.
You always have great stories. And I brought along the books, our Normandy Farm book, which after, talking with you about Normandy Farm, I went back and looked. And what's great about this book is that it talks all about the building, and then all about Grant Park, and all about Normandy Elementary School. And it's really good to kind of discover what that whole area is about.
Right. Yeah. And there are plenty of those books available at the Historical Society.
Yeah. Thanks for giving a plug there, because we, it's not on our website, but hopefully we'll get it up there soon. But they're available to purchase at Centerville-Washington.
No, you are
History.
right, though. I mean, in terms of that area of Centerville and Washington Township, if you're interested at all in how the Park District got formed, how Grant Park came to be, that kind of thing, it's all kind of right there in that book.
Yeah, and I didn't realize that until I had started reading it, how much you can discover from that.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you taking the time to be here today. And I also wanted to thank Miami Valley Communication Council for helping to produce this podcast. Of course, Jerry for being here and taking the time to visit with us. If you have an interesting Centerville or Washington Township story, please contact Centerville-Washington History. We want to hear your story. Please also come and visit our museums Tuesday through Friday, 12 o'clock to 4 p.m. We have 3 locations, 26 North Main Street, 89 West Franklin, and 78 North Main Street. For more information about historical buildings and people, please check our website, CentervilleWashingtonHistory.org. We look forward to sharing the history of this area with you. Thanks for being here. Bye-bye.